Hello, this is Jessica Johnson. So in Module 6, we are to address Standard 3 and 4. So my challenge for Standard 3, dealing with curriculum and assessment, this is one where it's not my favorite. I'm going to be honest with you. I think I've been honest about that one since the beginning of this, just for the simple fact of the collecting the data part of it. I did that when I taught first grade, but that was been 11 years ago. So the data process for me is a little bit different now because I'm the only FACS teacher. So, and I only work by myself. I have other people in our CTA department, but we don't really collaborate when it comes to data because we're all teaching different stuff. So, but I guess probably a challenge would be is getting teachers probably to buy into me, telling them or working with them, I guess I should say, to look at curriculum and assessment and looking at their data, just for the simple fact that I have not been in those meetings like they have been in for the past several years, but to get them to understand the importance of it, for us to consistently use it to drive our instruction, as well as whenever we collaborate with each other. But it's also, other teachers may struggle with the feelings of being unsure how to analyze that data. I know sometimes that's one of the ones that I struggle with, and I've talked about that with our teacher, our instructional coach at our school, and just listening to her and watching, because she said I had to learn too, so that made me feel better. She was a science teacher forever, but she likes numbers, and I'm not a number person, and just looking at it as a whole, and just seeing those meetings as being helpful rather than just being compliant. And oh my goodness, we got to go sit and listen to this meeting and do this data stuff. So that would be something that I would work on myself. A strategy to overcome that would be, I wrote, I would need to research and learn myself the effective methods of using that data, and what that looks like whenever you collaborate with others during that planning session with each other. What would be the most effective, and just bringing some simple protocols, I think, would be the best thing. And probably the biggest one is always going to be use student data, student information, their work. What did they do? What did they tell you? What did they show you? That kind of stuff. And then it would be important for me to model, and for me to learn how to model, how to interpret that data, and then use it to connect it to those instructional strategies that are tried and true, that help us to overcome whatever need that we have addressed in that data, would be important too. And then finding those resources for those teachers. The way it relates to NOLS, I have put on here that adult learners are motivated to learn when it is relevant and problem solving. So of course this would be a problem solving adventure every single time we identify a need through that, looking at that data and assessments of student work, and then determining what can we do to solve the problem, and giving everybody a chance to reflect on that would be important, I think, as well, and value everybody's response, and making sure that we respect everybody's thought process, and then using that student data to work on real things instead of like hypothetical scenarios. It's not important if it's a scenario to teachers. Sometimes we're like, hey, we want the real stuff. What can I do to help my classroom right now? And then it gives us engagement, and then there's ownership as well with those teachers. And then hopefully they and me as well, will all buy in together, and how we can just reflect and change our teaching practices to help our students. And then it's going to be meaningful and useful in our classrooms. And that's what that's what it should be about the whole time. It's not about, I caught you doing this, or your kids are doing this. What are you doing wrong? It's what can we do together to make it better for them and better for you as a teacher. So that's Standard 3. So Standard 4, this one is going to be the one that we're going to look at with teachers and coaching and modeling as a whole. And I think probably at my school, since I am a FACS teacher, some people look at me as not being a real teacher. So if I were to work with them, they may see, there may be a little bit of push from them, like, who is she? She don't know what she's talking about. She doesn't teach what I teach, kind of thing. She's not a real teacher. And I get that sometimes from some teachers, that I'm a FACS teacher. But before I was a FACS teacher, I taught primary school. So I do have that background of still teaching, and I still teach. My stuff's just more relevant than theirs sometimes, I think, but they find offense to that. But tracing down a rabbit trail. But basically it's going to be the more looking at teachers who may be on the defense rather than looking at that feedback as a way to help them, and that I'm not there to judge or criticize them, that rather we're going to work together to make them better than what they already are and build off of their strengths and just work together to see how we can help them be better teachers as a whole, because that's what we should strive to do. I don't know what administrator wouldn't want that for their staff, and it's always about the approach and the perspective, I think, as a whole. And if you build that trust with those teachers, that's going to happen as it goes. But ways to overcome it, I'm going to emphasize on that this is a reflective dialogue rather than evaluation. I'm not coming in there who's got you. I'm not there to do a TEKS. That's the other administration's job. I'm just there to help you. I'm just like an equal to them, and I want them to understand that. So that would be a trust thing that we'd have to do. We'd have to focus on what was seen, and then allow those teachers basically just to reflect on those lessons. And I was able to do that whenever we did that last assignment. That was neat to sit down and talk with that new teacher, Coach Parker, and talk with him about some things and just let him reflect about things, and then how he could fix some things and what we could provide to him to help him with that. So I guess even phrasing those questions as reflective rather than this is what you're going to do, you got to do this, you got to do this. Rephrasing those like, what do you think worked here and what didn't work? Because they know best. They're the ones who were there. Even though I was there observing, he still knows what he's got to work on and the ways he can improve. But then after that, we can model, of course. Model some ways, establish some norms, I think would be very important whenever we had those observation times, making sure they understand that I'm not there to evaluate them. I'm there just to coach them, to help them grow. It's going to be important for them to understand that. And then just being consistent with that support system and the feedback, and not just be like, okay, this is what we're going to do, and then I never go back and see you again, or I never talk with you, or we never reflect again. And I think that's where some people are so pushy or pushed off from the TEKS. We just see it as a way of, I got you, you're coming to my classroom for 20 minutes and that's all you're going to get to see, like come back again. But hopefully it'll be where we all grow together, and then I can even learn something that I can share with another teacher. And that's the way that a teacher leader needs to look at it too. It's not just what am I going to provide that teacher with, it's what could I provide other teachers with from learning from this teacher. So that leads me to that, to my NOLS, and that is where it goes perfectly with that one, a prior experience and need to be respected as a self-directed learner individual. So valuing their professional experience, regardless of how long I've taught. I mean, I've taught for 25 years now, so no, I haven't seen it all. I've seen a bunch, but I haven't seen it all. And they have seen things, especially in some academic classes, more so than what I've seen. And they need to be involved in that whole experience of having a diagnostic approach as to diagnosing what they need as a learner and what their students need. Because they're in there every single day. I'm not with them and their students every day. And it's going to change from block to block because we're on block schedule. But helps them respond better to reflective coaching, I think, is going to be important too with that NOLS, rather than just directive feedback of this is what you got to do, kind of like how the TEKS is. This is what you did wrong. And then sometimes some administrators are really great about telling us what we can do to fix it, where others kind of leave it a big hole, gaping hole, and we're like, okay, what can I do? And then nothing else has happened after that. And then teachers get frustrated. And making sure it's not always going to be about giving the feedback. It's just how the feedback is received. So that's going to be important to building that trust with those teachers. And then we can reflect together. And then using that feedback as a tool and not anything else for them to see. And hopefully it won't be a resistance for them. But that would probably be the biggest thing when it comes to NOLS, is just respecting those teachers and letting them bring to the table and let them teach me what I could teach other teachers as well. So, thanks.